players are testing their chops at the Alienware 1v1 stations. They'll be looking to put on the level of performance we saw from Flash Wolves, who picked up their play just yesterday. Today, though, they face off against G2 Esports, who snagged their second win over SKT by putting Wonder on Pike. Well, that's a brand new sentence. We'll see what other wild things I'll have to say about MSI 2019 after they clash in Game 1. Hello, everyone, and welcome to MSI Countdown, where we celebrate IG's run up until now and discuss Raz's top 5 players at MSI until the timer reaches 0 and we jump into Champions Select. After taking the world title last year, IG's international success continues here at MSI as they've been unstoppable so far in the group stage and the first team to secure their spot in the MSI knockouts. Following them in second place, we've got G2 just above SKT with Team Liquid, Flash Wolves, and Fangvu Buffalo fighting for the last semifinal spot.
Yeah, IG's looking pretty good. The 10-0 prediction that I had, it feels more real, even though some of their games are, albeit a little bit too happy for my liking. They've always been finding themselves in these team fights and Baron situations. They seem unstoppable.
They are a record-breaking team from the LPL, and they look to be smashing records here at MSI. If you look at them statistically, they are just astronomical in virtually every single category. They do 500 more DPM than the second-place team at this tournament.
God.
Wow. It's actually insane. That's pretty much a whole nother player added on to this team. They get to play with Nyx. Honestly, about some of those records, the most impressive part to me was that the star of their fastest game ever, and the world record-setting game, were actually Ning and Jackie Love, jungler and bottom lane, when the conversation has revolved so much around the Shy and Rookie, the two big stars.
All right, well, with that, yesterday, Shox caught up with IG's coach to learn more about their success at MSI so far.
Thank you very much, Dash. Well, I had a chance to catch up with IG's coach, Karam, yesterday. They are, of course, undefeated in the group stage so far. However, he is still staying realistic about their chances, saying that he does want them to clean up some of the mistakes they made in the group stage and maybe deliver some cleaner, crisper games going forward. I also got a chance to ask him who he sees as a threat, if at all, in the competition, because let's be honest, IG is looking unstoppable. And he said that even though they beat SKT and G2 handily, they think that both those teams had not been playing to the best of their potential, and they could pose a real threat when it comes to best of fives. That is what the coach had to say, playing it down a little bit because IG so far is crushing it, but we'll see. Back over to you guys.
Cleaner and crisper. Good luck on that one.
I feel like the IG coaching position isn't too hard. You're like, good job, nice win there, but clean up those mistakes, guys. Just keep saying that after everyone. It's always applicable.
Pat everyone on the back. Good job, do it again. Good job, do it again.
I did like what you touched on, though, talking about the rematches with SKT and G2. They alluded to the draft a little bit. There were some things that I think both of those teams were also not happy with, like G2 with the Vayne top. They were not happy coming into it with that. So some adjustments can be made to still keep these matches interesting. Even though IG looks so dominant, I'm looking forward to them playing against G2 and SKT again.
I love it. Let's continue down that line. The #1 challenger to IG's first place is G2, who are living up to the hype as the best team Europe has ever seen.
And there was some doubt, as the analysts coming in, Vedius and I were very vocal. This is the best team Europe has ever put together. And people are like, they haven't achieved anything yet. Well, their first go at MSI looks pretty damn good so far from here.
It's always tough when a team can just dominate the domestic competition to find themselves in their first international composite. And they actually delivered first game of the event in main stage, taking out SKT. The fashion in which they did it, too, let everyone know pretty quickly.
That is what's making me the most jealous of Europe. Watching these games, watching G2, not only are they finding success, they're winning games, but they're doing it in such an exciting fashion, and it makes me, kind of wish that we had a team like that.
Yeah, that creativity that we keep talking about keeps coming up and is aiding them in those victories. The other team that the IG coach was calling out that they might have to look out for is SKT. Now, Korea, though, as a region, I think we have to acknowledge has been slipping a little bit.
So the sentiment is that, if you have Samsung, you have Frika, it was supposed to be Griffin at that World Championship. And they're like, okay, Griffin or SKT, that's when Korea will come back. Well, we have SKT now, and they're still not there yet.
Yeah, I mean, people are kind of running out of excuses for Korea. After last year's Worlds, we're like, okay, we're going to get another shot. Maybe Griffin are actually the ones that were supposed to be there, but they choke in another finals. They don't deserve to be here. SKT are the representatives. This is the strength of LCK, and a lot of the LCK players and staff are kind of coming to grips with the new situation here in the world.
New reality.
Yeah, exactly. China's #1, and it's looking like Europe might be #2.
It's not over for them yet, though. We'll see if SAT can shake things up today as they face off against Flash Wolves and PVB. Another team who needs to bounce back is Team Liquid, currently on a 4-game losing streak. They'll face off against PVB in Game 2, a matchup that can decide a lot in the battle for 4th place. After the break, though, Dracos will tell you how to shadow step your way to victory on Kayn. One of many interesting picks here at MSI. We'll see you here after this.
In the 51st game of MSI 2019, we finally saw a Kayn, with Ning unleashing him in the jungle against the Flash Wolves. And as we count down towards another day of groups, I wanted to look closer at this champion and how you can succeed on the Shadow Reaper in competitive play. Now, you might ask, why Kayn? Well, really, honestly, no one cares about Kayn. What they care about is this man right here behind me. This is Rost. He is a scary murder machine. He has everything you could possibly want in a champion. He has sustain. He has percentage max HP damage. He has hard CC. He has fantastic flanking, great AoE. Overall, absolutely excellent champion. The problem? You can't start as Rost. You have to start with base Kayn. Base Kayn has a lot of problems. He's an angsty Sasuke wannabe. Yes, he has fantastic clear peek. Yes, he has fantastic map mobility. But in the early game, his absolute lack of dueling potential and any significant hard crowd control means that he's just really an underwhelming champion. So the question that you always have to ask when you come into competitive and you want your team to pick Kayn is, how do you get base Kayn into that form where he can be our boy Rast? Now, it starts in the drafting phase. Drafting for Kayn has two really important rules. Generally, you want to pick a strong top lane matchup with a lot of crowd control, ideally against a melee opponent. And then you want an enemy tank jungler to be selected as well. You want someone that you can outmatch in terms of early clear and generally go toe-to-toe with at least a little bit in terms of early trading. Now, you can see here for IG versus Flash Wolves that not all the conditions are met. While they do have the Kayn and while they do have a strong topside matchup with the Kennen into the Akali, they've picked it into Xin Zhao. Xin Zhao is a notoriously strong early duelist, so this is actually a pretty high-risk decision. That said, IG opt to go for it anyway, and the game plays out pretty well for them in a lot of circumstances. Now, the most important thing in the early game is getting your transform. Yes, you can farm those creeps, but you will not transform if you do not fight. Fighting when you're weak, obviously not ideal, but that is the duality of Kayn. Yes, you get the strong extra form, but you have to fight in the early game. And what do you want to do there? You want to gank your strong lane. The goal is to get damage down and work towards your transform. If you can get summoner spells, if you can get kills, that's great. That is a bonus. Just do not die and get points towards that transform. We can see how it worked out for IG here. And here's the thing. This is not an ideal circumstance, but they are able to get a lot of transform damage down. They move in. Ning is able to throw out a few abilities and trade, but you can see that ultimately it's all too easy to turn onto the Shy and just ignore all of Ning's early damage. While he does get the transform, it costs a little bit too much in that exchange. The idea there is right, but they probably could overcommit given the context of the Xin Zhao. Later, however, once the red Kayn is online, once you get that transform, you can dominate the map with one of the strongest bruiser kits in the game. As we look back at this team fight, you can see just how obnoxious the champion is. Even when Ning is in a pretty significant individual deficit, he's still able to be so obnoxious in his fights, quickly moving through the wall, instantly following up with some AoE, sustaining through everything on the ult, and is just generally untouched while still dealing significant damage, offering CC to disrupt a team fight, and just generally being absolutely miserable to play against. So to recap, you win when you get your transform early. That cannot come at the cost of putting your team behind. Losing is transforming too late or putting your team in a deficit. And as a final reminder, Shadow Assassin is terrible and competitive. I'm sorry, friends. It's still really, really fun, I promise. But that's going to be it for me. We'll send it back to our resident Yordle at the desk.
Adequately done, Dracos. Thank you very much. While Kayn was an interesting pick, the stunner pick from yesterday's games was clearly G2's wonder, Pyke in the top lane.
And Pyke, actually, I really like the theory behind picking it into Jace. Jace is this lane-winning matchup here where he likes to push very heavily, harass you under turret, push into your turret and get those plates off it. But Pyke, with the passive, with the gift of the drown, can back off and heal up a lot of that harassment as it's dished out. So it doesn't get as bad of a matchup early on as a lot of other champions. And then you always have the surprise factor because of the mobility and the crowd control that he brings to the table of trying to pull off a jungle gank, killing the Jace. However, we saw SK Telecom target the Pyke early on and not really let them use those tools effectively.
The other thing that I really loved about it is that once it got out of the lane phase, it was so successful at kind of like abusing vision areas on a map. Because of its high mobility and its ability to have like the sustain mechanics, like if it walks into a warded area, it can either very quickly go to the non-warded area or take these like long extended trades where he just kind of backflips out and is suddenly back in full health. And so he exhausts your cooldowns, he exhausts your vision, and he exhausts your patience. And against a team like SKT, that's a really cool play style that caught them off guard.
And we saw the other kind of cherry on top of the cake is that he shares gold with all these kills.
Yeah.
So even though the Pyke got behind early, got to share a bunch of the cash, and it only took one team fight for it to pay off in multiple thousands of gold.
And you're always relevant if you can kill somebody from 20% to 0 with no items. Next up, we saw G2 with another one of their unique picks. I mean, not unique to the world or globally this split, but here in the tournament, the Karthus jungle.
Exactly. It's been a split-long discussion. Jankos has been utilizing it throughout the entirety of it, and it's been to great use there. So I don't want to see it as an excuse in pick ban because they fell incredibly far behind. And a lot of the issues when you are behind, there's no hard CC to get your way back into the game, but the scaling that it gives you, the high AP damage that you have, so then the flex picks, the AD flex pick in particular, like Jace, you can actually go into the mid lane. So compositionally, it works out fantastically, and it's a great high damage later on in the game.
Yeah, I think the only thing is the early game getting exposed if you get attacked by an aggressive jungler, and that's kind of the downfall.
The Xin Zhaos, the Rek'Sais can definitely threaten that pick. Next up, a pair of champions that were the talk of the town coming into the tournament. How would they warp champion select? What would be the answers to it? Taric, Sona.
I feel like Taric and Sona are more capable in the draft phase than they are actually on the Rift right now for this tournament because we haven't gotten great looks from them in both of their games, but because of what they can leverage in that draft, because you choose that, hey, I'm not going to play either side of this matchup, so you just throw away a ban on it, I think it's actually the most important thing until we see a team actually take over a 5v5 with them.
Yeah, coming into the tournament, it seemed impervious. A lot of teams, like, for the most part, were like, oh, we're completely afraid of it. If there's a Taric on one side, well, then we just have to pick a Sona. Like, it's just like, there's no way to really deal with it. But I loved the LEC playoffs, the fact that we got to see some Blitzcrank, and I was sure that there was going to be a great answer in this tournament going up against it, because the LPL, we just haven't seen it get played at all. So when Invictus Gaming saw SKT pick it up, it was like, well, Draven player right here, let's just try and ram it early.
Yeah, I definitely know for sure SK Telecom are traumatized by
That's what I was gonna say.
the Tarek Soda because they banned Tarek, first ban every single game since
After that
being
one.
defeated in 16 minutes. And I think it will stay that way, at least for them. To me, it's such a team-by-team champion and composition that's going to have to pull off.
Yeah, I'm very curious, though, to see, again, how all of these 5 picks continue to play out throughout the tournament, maybe what answers certain teams come out for.
What's crazy to me is that all of these picks all work for G2. We've seen them throw every single iteration of it. So while we're talking about multiple teams, why G2 are so exciting in this tournament is because all of these picks they can weaponize.
I will say, though, that the Karthus, I've seen Ning play that, not to his style, not to his specialty. You do really require your adjacent lanes to be performing incredibly well, which you would think that would be perfect for Invictus Gaming, but you also need the Karthus to hide himself a little bit in the jungle so he can farm up pretty quickly. And Ning doesn't hide. he keeps going forward.
Some fun, unique picks here so far at MSI 2019. We'll soon get Raz's insane top 5 player tier list at MSI so far. OMFG, you won't believe who's not on it. Don't touch that browser.
Get on my way. If IG tries to continue the fight, they are going to be 4 versus 5. But the Shy goes on a killing spree.
The Shy, I would say, has looked to put above every single top laner.
This is a guy who's becoming a household name.
Just a transcending top laner. People could confidently say that he's the best player in the world. Confident the best player in the world.
Get on my way. I got to one on the side. You know what I did? I'm on my job. I'm doing my thing. Do it again.
If an enemy come, he just touch the gang or just kill the enemy. Make enemy scared to gang.
Flash to try and set up this straight line skill shot, red light up both the Shy, outplays it, and then Ning just able to play cleanup.
Talking to the EU pros, I mean, the stories that they tell about playing versus the Shy are like literal nightmare fuel.
Pretty much every matchup he knows, just plays to his limits pretty well.
Shut down on the Ning will not mean much when Invictus Gaming is diving deep into the base, and it is an ace.
Just look at those angles from the Shy.
I think the Shy just like probably one of the best players at living in the chaos.
These insane carry top laners are looking onto him to see if they can topple him.
You make a normal tier list, and then you make for when you're facing the Shy. Oh, we can't give him Jace, we can't give him this.
Which one do you give him?
I mean, ideally you can ban 20 carries.
You know what I did? I'm on my job, I'm doing my thing.
All right, here we go.
They said whatever, now I'm talking, you should score. I'm going in.
还是真的是可以一个打穿5个的感觉，一个追着5个跑。
좋은 선수라고 사람들에게 불리게 됐는데 좀 그것에 대해서 제가 보통 압박감 안 느끼는 편인데 이제 조금 관심이 많아지시고 좀 더 경기를 잘하는 모습을 보여주다 보니까 좀 압박감을 좀 느끼기 시작했고 지금 MSI가 중요한 무대가 될 것 같아요 저희한테.
跟他最好的表现的话来说的话，就是还差一点，就现在他状态还不是最好的状态。
Welcome back to MSI 2019, where we're about 14 minutes away from G2 versus Flash Wolves. This tournament has created a venue for some of the best players League of Legends has ever seen. And with this in mind, we challenged Raz to give us his top 5 pros at MSI so far. So take it away.
Let's go for it. So the definition is going to be important about this one. So I'm going to say top 5 that we've seen at the tournament so far. Just what we've seen, the 4 days currently played out. Klid coming in as number 1. 3 of the 3 MVPs that he was able to get. Then you have Rookie, Caps, Faker, and Wonder to wrap it up.
Woo! Kobe's got mouth agape right now.
So
hit me.
My mind is absolutely blown right here, right now. This was not even close to what I was expecting. I did not. First of all, right? You're like, all right, where's the shot? Is this actually in order? You know, what are these guys? Where are we starting with here, Raz? Okay. So Klid, even just to me right now, defend Klid as being better than Ning. Because I think that Klid has been exceptional, but people are also underestimating Ning. Him pulling out the Camille in the game where they had to smash so early, I thought was such a big look from IG as well.
100%. Consistency matters the most to me. And when you see Invictus Gaming games, remember, there's a major caveat of the games that we've seen versus Bungbu, Buffaloes, G2 to a certain extent. Ning coming into these games, into the tournament, a lot of the time started off on a flat foot. And that's not to say that I don't expect Ning to come out, because I'm high on Ning. I'm high on the Shy, who we don't even see on the list. But based off of what we've seen in the tournament so far, he has not been the consistent, cool-headed force. It's been the other carries that have been starting it off.
The 6-0 team in the tournament only has 1 player on your list right now, and the guys pushing in third, they got 2 members.
Thankfully, I started off as a top 10 list, and Jackie Love came in pretty high for me. So not high enough for top 5, and remember, we're in a championship
Not high
tournament.
enough for 6-0.
Look. Calm yourself. You gotta relax now. The reason why I have Rookie so high, because on consistency, even throughout a lot of the questionable games like the Flash Wolves disaster, Rookie came in super strong, super calm, and even in the early games when he was getting pressured 3v1, you see the consistency in his early game goal differential, CS differential. He was a major playmaker for the team.
I have no problems with any of that analysis. 100% agree with you. That's why Rookie should be number 1. He is the best performing player at this tournament right now over the likes of Klid, who again, I would put Klid actually second. I do agree that there is a conversation about Ning, but I think Klid is working with a little bit less than Ning is.
Yes.
I'm just shocked that Faker is on the top 5 and that you have 2 members of SKT.
The hardest one for me is like conversations with Faker or Meliodas. For Faker, someone who, for a lot of people, have high expectations, or some people, coming into the tournament saying that he doesn't have it anymore, right? Faker, throughout all the numbers, he has been stellar. And in all the troubles that FCT has had, either in the top lane, troubles getting Kayn back into the game, or the bottom lane, that whole Tariq Sona catastrophe, he's been keeping them in these games, or a lot of the times being like, what the hell's happening, team? Like, he has been so strong, and I see that consistency, and you have to rate it in what has been a very chaotic tournament so far.
I'd say one of the main differences for me with Faker and the other 2 mid laners that you have on your list is that Caps and Rookie both roam exceptionally well.
Yes.
And that's maybe the one thing that Faker has not displayed to me so far this tournament.
Coming into the tournament, it has seemed like a mid laners tournament. Remember, people looking at the power of these mids, I'm a little sad that I couldn't even get to show Jensen, who's been performing so well for Team Liquid. I thought when it comes down to being able to pick up wins, Faker was able to do that pretty easily for his team. And I suppose like a 3-3, a lot of LCK fans are upset. but I think Faker's shown a lot, and he has way more in the tank.
Notably, no AD carries and no supports sneaking into the top 5.
I'm a little, once again, Champions Tournament, so much impact in the jungle and mid, and I think that somewhat has skewed it.
Who is your top-rated ADC then?
Jackie Love for me.
Okay.
Jackie Love has been stellar, and the saddest thing about that is, like, you look at the Vayne performance versus Team Liquid, and that kind of has drawn it back for me, because if that performance didn't happen, then certainly he hits that top 5.
And what about for supports? Just out of curiosity, who's number 1?
Let's see. Support.
Uh-oh.
Oh, no!
Did you know
Not even one in the top 10.
So remember, expectation coming into the tournament was like, Bao Lan and Core JJ were the people that I was looking at, especially Core JJ. I had my eyes on him. It was just very sad that individually he wasn't performing. And for Bao Lan, once again, he just has a lot of stars around him. And I think other members in those games were the members
just
that
a little
popped
bit
up.
higher.
Exactly.
Yeah. I guess, to be fair to Raz, as far as the supports rating, a lot of the solo laners have shown better performances on some support champions.
Oh, no.
Oh, Lord. All right, well, this is Raz's top 5. Please tweet at Esports with your MSI top 5, and definitely at Raz. Get in there with some of that flame. We'll see what Wonder and Caps can do, though, against the Flash Wolves as the LEC champions look to continue their success here at MSI 2019.
There we go. There is so much more to talk about, especially going into the best of 5s. I expect the Shy to come right back into that list.
Meanwhile, in control of second place right now, G2 looking extremely strong. Coming over from Europe, we did doubt Frosker and Vedius talking about, yes, they're definitely better than SKT. Well, they're a full game ahead of SK Telecom right now. They hold their own destiny with defending this number 2 spot, and that goes so far, heading towards the best of 5 series, I feel like.
And it says so much to the top side of the map. Jankos, Wonder, and Caps have been performing so well that they're able to come in second place, even with Perks and Mickey X really underperforming. I had a lot of hopes for Mickey X in particular, but that's once again, another example of individual misplays happening there.
I'm really glad that you brought up Jankos when you started that sentiment, because I feel like Jankos is kind of like the guy that is flying under the radar, not necessarily with fan sentiment, but in a lot of the conversations with analysts. It's all about Wonder, it's all about Caps, it's all about Mickey, but Jankos has been so on form for this team, and especially in a matchup across from Flash Wolves, because this is a revitalized Flash Wolves. They are looking much better, they're scaling up into the tournament, but their weak point is their jungler, and Jankos can rip this guy apart and just make this such a one-sided matchup.
I'm going to hop on that because in what could have been seen as a sure win on day 1, G2 now go up against, as you mentioned, a revitalized Flash Wolves who reminded fans why they're a mainstay here at MSI.
Flash Wolves coming into the tournament started out so flat because we expected so much out of some of these individuals, Hanabi and Rather especially. And in a lot of the team fights where they're coming in and saying, oh, they're one of the better team fighting teams, well, they were catastrophic. But now we're starting to see members like Betty really able to free fire and had that spacing because, you're seeing Boogie come out and give him a lot of frontline pressure. And so the team fights have been so much better, and it gave them that win versus Team Liquid.
Yeah, and I think it should give a lot of the other teams pause because Flash Wolves are an organization with a history of winning at MSI. This would be 4 years in a row that they would move on to the group stage, and now they're looking like they have a very good chance to do that.
And they're done with the Cho'Gath and Rumble mid lane, I hope.
Hopefully.
Can you imagine being the jungler? You rock out of your jungle, you look top, there's Cho'Gath, you look mid, there's Rumble, you're like Robin Williams from Jumanji, what year is it? What is this composition? What do I do with this?
I don't know. Yeah, I don't have the answer for that, and they didn't either, clearly. Let's run with some predictions for the day. Yesterday was maybe the toughest of all days to predict because of exactly the discussion we're having, maybe the kick-up for the Flash Wolves. And taking a look at the predictions, we only have one differential, and that would be the G2 call for Frosker. And over IG, currently undefeated at the top of the stand.
I heard that there was some spicy predictions. I was like, someone picked Fongbu Buffaloes over TL. I see, a good meatball discussion.
No, I'm calling you out for the G2 over IG. Not that it isn't possible, but just that it will be the first loss that IG sustains if it happens.
Okay, so there's two schools of thought here. The first one is trying to predict the upset. MSI, usually there's upsets. I'm like, which one's probably the most likely? I was between PvB and TL and G2 and Invictus Gaming, and I decided to roll the dice here. Now, that said, I don't think there's a lot of analysis that you can take from the first time that these teams faced. That Vayne top, you heard the apologies from G2. It got absolutely slammed. I don't expect that to be the run back. So for me, it's kind of like reset. And maybe that's the biased lens of looking at it from an LEC perspective, but that's how I feel about it.
Yeah.
This is like reset from ground zero. What do we got?
Even with those heavy criticisms of the first game, remember that game started out with 3 early kills for G2. So that's one of those expectations where G2 is usually the team that starts out so strong early in these games that I can see that happening.
I mean, even IG themselves in a lot of their interviews after their wins have been like, yeah, I can definitely see, you know, many of these teams taking wins off of us. So it's not like it's this crazy, like, what? I can't believe it. They're never gonna. But
right. Shock, speaking to the coach, said specifically G2 and SKT.
Exactly, because of the way that they play as well. When they like to test their limits, I guess, is a kind of common term, but kind of playing on that edge. We saw in the interview as well with Wonder, where he was kind of giving this testimony to how good Shy is at knowing his limits. And that has been one of the keys, why it makes it so difficult to see teams overcoming these players, because even starting on the individual basis, it's a hard task to try and see them losing those little pieces.
And in terms of like the actual analysis of what would a G2 victory look like over Invictus Gaming, I think that I don't want to call G2 baby IG. I kind of want to throw that out the window because while these teams play similar styles, the minute differences are so important.
Yeah.
And it's the side lane pressure. It's how G2 play around their side lanes and how they play around the map. Yes, Invictus Gaming can play side lane, but they often do it to collapse, to look to skirmish, to look to fight, whereas G2 are mostly about gaining individual advantages, that gold, that experience, those objectives, and it's that difference if G2 can play around it, if they can find an advantage in a solo lane and then use it to control the entire map, whereas IG find advantages in solo lanes and use it to control team fights, that's what a G2 victory looks like over Invictus Gaming.
To me, it also looks like an MVP game for Jankos. If it's a G2 victory, that's what I would assume would be the MVP of that game for me, because I feel like that's going to be such a big determining factor in how they get to that mid stage.
I mean, IG, in talking to the coach, wants crisper, cleaner play from the squad. We realize that that might not come with the 5 players that you have on the Rift there. But Raz, I'll return to you and say, as we narrow our way towards the knockout stage and IG looks to cement themselves in their, beginning of a legacy or dynasty here for the LPL, what do you want to see out of this squad that will make them, separate and feel unreachable for the rest of the teams?
But I would love to see more frequently, and when Coach Karam makes a mention of this, it is mostly in Baolan getting used a little bit more frequently and working alongside Ning. I think whenever he looks to collapse through mid lane, that's when the team looks at their strongest, because usually they get their early game leads, and you're like, okay, early game team getting solo lane leads, that's fair, that's fine. Let's try and get a play working through mid lane or top lane to upset that. But then every time the LPL playoffs, whenever that becomes a strategy, suddenly Baolan starts coming up and the numbers game works towards Invictus Gaming. We haven't seen that so far yet, but I expect that to be the case early.
I really like that because that's one of the biggest strengths of G2 to me is that multiple members roaming around the map super early on and making those shifts very, very quickly.
There's actually a trick that when Baolan was known as Megan, he used to gank the top side of mid lane because it would never be warded, and he used to gank Faruqi very early on. So watch if it rears its head if he plays something like a Rakan.
All right, we're going hard on the third game of the day, G2 versus IG. We got 2 more before that. It's time to kick off day 4 of MSI Groups as we leave it to QuickShot, Vedius, and Spawn for G2 versus Flash Wolves.
Thank you very much, Dash, and hello, everybody. I'm Trevor QuickShot Henry, joined at the car stage by Jake Spawn Tabiri and Andrew Vedius Day. And as Dash just mentioned, G2 versus IG is the battle at the top of the table later today. Before we get to that, we're opening with G2 versus Flash Wolves, and for Flash